in the behavior of the president and those around him, could it be legally something he could, prove in a court of law? And if it's not, if there's any sense that there could be a doubt, then it cannot be used. Okay? That's the reality of what that report was dealing with. It has nothing to do with the reality of what the president actually did and all of the other things. You can't expect something like that, which is a basically legal approach, to define what we're really looking at, and which people are asking about, integrity, these sorts of issues. It just can't do that. Similarly, when we ask science to do things that it's not built to do, but we look at what results we get from science as if they are the ultimate truth, instead of remembering that they are a narrow aspect of a certain portion of what is part of a very complex situation. Whenever we do that, we forget the truth of who we are. And we forget that reality, if you want to use that word, is, shall we say, fluid. Even quantum physics is showing that. The research in quantum physics showing how we change our reality simply by what we put our attention to. Well, I think the disconcerting thing for many, and it's very true, as we continue evolving, if you will, things that we previously relied on as being cut and dried simply aren't. And we will experience them differently because of this evolution. And so I think this and the other big news story, one of the big news stories is the situation with this young actor from Empire who presumably staged an attack upon himself that was supposed to be a racial attack, turned out not to be, and was being charged with crimes, and then had all of those charges dismissed. A lot of people upset about that. They feel he's walking away. He's paid off, or for whatever reasons, the prosecutors have decided not to prosecute him. And again, we're talking about legal stuff here. So we're talking about the prosecutors reached a decision for some reason. Maybe they felt that, the crimes that were being talked about couldn't either be met substantially, or the result of it, if they got a conviction, the judge might give very little time, or might even not give anything at all. So perhaps they made the decision that it'd be better to get certain money and also community service from him, in return for dropping those charges. I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with it, but again, when you're talking about certain types of prescribed reality, it works within its own rules, with its own framework, whether or not it rings true or not. It's just the game that's being played. Wow, spent more time on that than I thought I would. All right, let's talk about the UN's World Happiness Report, which came out this week. And we found out what the 10 happiest countries in the world are. They collected data from people in over 150 countries and ran a scale from 0 to 10 and compared it over against other countries. The variables they used were real GDP per capita, that's gross domestic product. That's how much money, basically, a country makes. Social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom to make life choices, and perceptions of corruption. Now, they also compared each country against a hypothetical country they called dystopia, which has the lowest national averages for each of those variables. And by using this, they came up with the top 10 happiest countries. And Finland was number 1. The others were all, by the way, they were all Scandinavian countries. Denmark, Switzerland, Norway, all held the top spots, as they have done for the last 4 years. Every year they do this poll, and every year these countries come to the top spot. So it's worth asking, what is happiness according to this poll, and what do these countries do that make it a happy place? And there were actually, the questionnaire actually deals with 14 areas in those 5 key points that we talked about. Business and economy. Okay, so that's the GDP portion of it. Citizen engagement, communications and technology, diversity, social issues, education and families, emotions, environment and energy, food and shelter, government and politics, law and order, that's safety, of course, how safe you feel in an environment, health, religion and ethics, transportation, and work. And so what is it that brings this sense of happiness? Well, part of it is that people in these countries feel that they are taken care of. In other words, they feel free to pursue their own sense of personal fulfillment. They feel less anxious because they don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about certain things that they know are taken care of for them, like healthcare. Like economics. And a lot of this has to do with a very strong safety net that these countries have. That means social support, an abundance of public services, and so on. safety, a sense that you can be safe in your own environment, racial conflicts, those sorts of things, diversity. So what is happiness? Well, it's perplexing to me that still, after all of this time on planet Earth and all of the evidence to the contrary, humans still seem to associate, or many humans, particularly humans in this country, tend to associate happiness with stuff. Who has the most stuff? Who can accumulate the most wealth? Wealth is considered to be indicative of happiness in, certainly this country and other Western cultures as well. But if you just think about that, wealth is one of the easiest ways to make people unhappy. And one of the biggest reasons they found, and this is particularly salient in looking at people who grapple with depression and people who have attempted to commit suicide, people who have the stuff that's supposed to make you happy. They have money. They have maybe a family. They have a big house in different countries. They have success and fame and all of these things, and they're still miserable. They still feel pressured. The biggest example recently that I can think of to illustrate that is what happened to Mr. Anthony Bourdain. He was a CNN commentator, and he had a series on cooking and travel where he'd go all over the world. He was very successful, very popular, sold books, made a lot of money, and was so miserable that last year he ended his life. And what researchers have found is that depression becomes more profound when a person realizes, or when a person's in a situation that they are told they shouldn't feel that way. Then it really hits home. If you've got all kinds of troubles and you're struggling and trying to survive, then feeling depressed is one thing, and there's a seemingly legitimate reason for it. But if you've got everything, you have no seeming outer troubles, and you're still miserable, well, then that can contribute to depression, because how am I ever going to be happy if this doesn't work? What is going to work? So it is really worth having this discussion about what makes people happy. And I'm not sure that it's completely defined by these categories that they have in the UN report, but that certainly is part of it. I think happiness does have a lot to do with what the psychologist Maslow used to call self-actualization. And in his description of and outlining of the process towards self-actualization, he illustrated that there were stages. You have to feel confident that your physical needs are met.